time for the meet and greet. Meet and greet. It's time for the meet and greet. Meet and greet. Proceed to the meet and greet.
Hello viewers, welcome to Asavari's meeting show 37, and we have Aaron Spring. Aaron doesn't need any introduction anymore, and I would love to introduce him as the star speaker of Asavari. So due to a time constraint, let's just focus on the topics of discussion. Our opening topic is about Her Highness, her legacy. Queen Elizabeth II. 70 years of her rule ended, and now her son, Prince Charles, is the next king. At the age of 96, Queen Elizabeth II has died peacefully at Balmoral Castle. It was the longest of any British monarch in history. Under her rule, the British Empire continued its transformation into the Commonwealth of Nations. So, Aaron, I would like to know from you that how do you remember the Queen?
So I look at the Queen, obviously we send our condolences and prayers to her family, but I see her as just such a majestic monarch. And the way she carried herself, nobody knew what her views were. She did not get involved in politics, despite the fact that she met many presidents, she met many prime ministers, she met many heads of states and kings and queens. She didn't get involved in politics. So what I admire most about her is she was like more of a unifier. She didn't give her opinion. She didn't show anybody any ill will. And she really tried to bring people together and show that she showed class. She really did. She did not divide in any way. And I have a couple of quotes here from US presidents. In 1951, on October 31st, the Queen flew in to meet Harry Truman, and she said about our nation, "Free men everywhere look toward the United States with affection and love." She said that about us as the first thing she did in her first visit here. So what does that tell you? She loved this nation. She admired this nation. And Truman replied that anyone who became acquainted with the Queen fell in love with the Queen. So what does that tell you? That in her first visit, the president was charmed. He was wooed by her. He was absolutely amazed by her. And she complimented our country the second she got here. Then Reagan. I'm going to bounce around with a few presidents, not necessarily in order. Reagan went horseback riding with the Queen. And she said, "I must admit, the Queen is quite an accomplished horsewoman." So what does that tell you? It tells you that the Queen wasn't just, some fancy lady who was stuck in a castle. She got out into the countryside. She rode horses. She was just like the rest of us. She did things that normal people do. She got along with Reagan well. If you look at what Eisenhower said, he said, "There have been very few times in my life where I have been given the gift of eloquence, and that has been conferred upon me. Tonight is one of those nights." He said that when the Queen was eating with him in one of the ballrooms. Tricia Nixon was rumored to, there was a rumor that when the Queen visited Richard Nixon, that Tricia Nixon and Prince Charles were supposed to get married. There was rumor that they were going to set them up together. So there was such love between our nations that we were willing to have the president's daughter and the Queen's son get married. There were rumors that was actually going to happen. In 1989, the Queen actually knighted Ronald Reagan for the support during the Falklands War. So, and I could go on and on with Bill Clinton, with Barack Obama, with George Bush, even with President Trump, when he walked in front of her during that procession, she didn't even bat an eye. It was a rude gesture that he did, and she just completely wrote it off and smiled, and nothing wrong with it. President Biden, she had a good relationship with. So you look at all these presidents from 1951 to today, she got along with everybody. When she visited here, she was loved. I just read off remarks that were spoken about her by these presidents. So our relation, despite the fact that we, had a revolution against England, we became such allies during the 1900s, and we're still such best friends today. Our leaders got along well, and we will truly miss the Queen.
Exactly. So as usually, Aaron, you did a lot of researches. Hats off to you. And I remember Queen saying, "Be dutiful." So I try to do my duties, my responsibilities, and I try to be dutiful. So let's now move on to the next topic of discussion. So that's a very impressive T-shirt that you are wearing, where England is written right here. I know your passion, your love, your respect for England and for Queen Elizabeth, and I really more than appreciate and admire it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. So the next topic of discussion is the Kenya election. On August 15, Mr. William Ruto, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, was declared the winner of the 2022 presidential election by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. The new president will face challenges in confronting regional instability, youth unemployment, inflation, and the economic consequences of both the COVID-19 pandemic and Russo-Ukrainian war. So, Aaron, what is your opinion about Kenya's election and the new president?
Well, I'm very shocked that it's been accepted the way it is, because as we know, the last few presidential elections were strife with violence and a lot of unrest. And I believe it was back in 2008, or actually maybe it was 2016. It was one of those elections that 1,200 or so Kenyans had died because of the unrest, fighting between the sides. And so it's a good thing that we've gotten this far in a peaceful manner. And I just hope it stays that way. Unfortunately, there's signs that I'm seeing that I believe there will be some more unrest, or at least some more opposition against Mr. Ruto. For example, Mr. Kenyatta, who's leaving the office of president, he didn't even mention Mr. Ruto in his speech where he was announcing the presidential election results. That's a problem, because Mr. Ruto and him were friends for years, and they only recently did not ended their friendship. And Mr. Kenyatta backed Mr. Ruto's opposing leader, who was actually opposition of Mr. Kenyatta for 40 years before that. So it was a very interesting dynamic. Mr. Ruto was not expected to win. He was considered the president of Hustler Nation. Hustler Nation are these young Kenyans who don't have a job. They want to work. They have a strong work ethic. They just want opportunity. So this was a block of voters that broke heavily in favor for Mr. Ruto. And that's why he became the president. Let's also remember, just a few years ago, Mr. Ruto barely escaped the Hague Criminal Court because he was brought to Hague on counts of violence and political violence. And because witnesses didn't show up and a few other miscalculations occurred, he was never tried. So we have to be careful, because while Mr. Ruto is supposed to, help the youth, and he's going to be great for the youth and give all these people jobs, he has a history of violence and projecting violence. And he just got off on a technicality, if you really think about it. So I wish him the best. I hope the best for Kenya. But given their last few elections that have been unstable, have led to political violence, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping for the best here. I haven't seen any violence yet, but you just never know. And here's another couple of things that we need to worry about. Is it's not just his domestic policy that's going to be important, but there's going to be things out of his control that are going to affect what happens in Kenya. For example, Al-Shabaab in Somalia, as they continue to take ground in Somalia, they are going to be launching into Kenya and launching into Ethiopia. And we've already seen evidence of this. The Ethiopian military and the Kenyan military have fought Al-Shabaab. So as Al-Shabaab continues to grow, that's a problem. As the Ukrainian and Russian war continues to take place and the wheat production continues to decline and wheat exports can't get to where they're at, Africans will continue to starve. So you have that issue too. So I think Mr. Ruto is coming in at a very critical time. And this is a time when Kenyans need to be united. And unfortunately, it seems they're not. So you've got all these issues within the Horn of Africa, all these issues on the European level that are affecting the Horn of Africa, and all these inner issues within Kenya that have been taking place over the last 40 years. Remember, he's only their fifth president. He's only the fifth president. So in the last 40 years, they've only had four other presidents, and there's been all this unrest with that. So there's all these moving pieces. So I hope Mr. Ruto, I wish him the best. I think he's got a good vision for employment and youth jobs, but I think a lot of things are out of his control, and we just need to watch what happens with Al-Shabaab and the Russian war. to see really how well he does.
A quick question, So can we, United States of America, can we help Kenyans, by supplying, exporting um, wheat and some essential food commodities?
I mean, I don't see why not. I cannot understand for the life of me why we have not made stronger trading partners out of African countries. President Obama did a phenomenal job when he was pushing for those trade deals back in 2014. I think only a few of them went through. But if we don't start to establish better trade networks with these African countries and better relations, China will. And China has already begun. And China has been investing billions and billions of dollars into the infrastructure of these countries in exchange for some of their natural resources, in exchange for other land rights. So it's in our best interest, both for national security and for trade purposes, to establish better networks. And Kenya would be a perfect country to establish a network with, especially given the fact that they are a democracy and we can have some influence there.
Right. I completely agree with you, Aaron. I mean, let me share my recent experience in Washington, D.C. It was a pleasure trip with my family. And I happened to be in the African American Museum. And it's a great preservation of the African culture, heritage, history. So it is really very heart-touching, the way they were brought in our country, and about the Emancipation Proclamation, about the assassination of your leader, my leader, our leader, Mr. Abraham Lincoln. So I strongly feel that, we need to better our ties with the African countries, because we have so many African Americans in our country. They are now the part of USA, their tremendous contribution in our country, whether it's sports or in movies or in cuisine or in any kind of creative, productive thing, So what do you think that we should, focus more on making our ties stronger with the African countries?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at the new battleground. In Europe throughout the 50s and 60s, it was a battle between communism and capitalism, US influence versus Russian influence, and we appear to have won for now. So now you're seeing, I think Africa is the new Europe. I think Africa is going to be the battleground between Chinese influence and American influence. And which way of government do you want to go? So it's only in our best interest to create better trading partners. We live in a global economy. And if we don't, we're losing out markets to our Chinese competitors. So it doesn't, on a cultural significance level, I agree with you. I think it's a good idea, given, we have a large African population here. But I also think for a national security and for an economic reason, we should be creating better partnerships with these countries. Africa is also projected to have 4 billion people by the end of the century. So that's where the population is going to be. That's where the consumers are going to be. That's where we should be pushing our business. And also we should be pushing our ecological efforts, because Africa is such a bastion for different species and biodiversity and plants and fauna and flora. So if we can have better American influence there, we can also help save their environment and influence their environmental laws with our environmental laws. And as an environmentalist, I'm all for that.
Mm-hmm. I have heard that there has been a tremendous impact of the climate change, and Africa has been facing a lot of drought scenarios, so.
Yep. Well, Somalia has now fourth straight year drought. Next year will be the fifth. They're projecting 7.1 million out of 16.9 million of Somalians are now starving. So you're seeing this drought. Millions of animals are dead, farm animals. People are dying. It's really terrible. So we need to step in. The UN is already pushing the Great Green Wall Initiative, which is to plant billions of trees across 11 African countries in the Sahel rather. And I think we should be pushing that as well. It's only in our best interest. We always push that we're gonna, we have to argue amongst Republicans and Democrats and Russia and Ukraine and this and that. If we don't have a world to live in and a world to save, and we don't have a world to breathe in, we're not going to have politics to debate. We're not going to have wars to fight. We're not going to have all these different things. We got to save the world first. So I think it's in our best interest to go to a country or a continent rather like Africa, where like I said, across an 11 country span in the Sahel, they're planting 1 billion trees and get on that. This is how we stop desertification. This is how we get good crop yields again, and this is how we stop starvation.
And there are so many endangered species, all over in Africa, And so I do understand what you say. And, at the end of the line or the road, people, they remember the phrase that a friend in need is a friend indeed. So, during their hard days, if we can extend our helping hand to make things easy and to make their life easy, to make Africa green again. So, why not?
Yep. No, absolutely. And I believe Africans, as well as some Asians countries, use the least resources out of anybody in the world. So they're pretty sustainable as is. We just need to push practices that don't strip the land of all its resources, that don't deforest. It's all about education at the end of the day. Because I think probably 95% of Africans believe in what you and I are saying, but it's just the countries that are getting in bed with the foreign governments that then that's what's causing the environmental degradation.
And also the point to be noted is that people choose a wrong path, a path of crime, due to unemployment, severe starvation, and poverty. So
Yep.
if we can enhance the trade and tourism ties with them, if there is some kind of cash flow from us to them and from them to us, it is definitely going to be very fruitful and productive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, our next topic of discussion is about Brazil. So Bolsonaro and Lula. People may think that Bolsonaro and Lula, they're friends. So one is an extreme rightist and the other one is extreme leftist. Bolsonaro is rightist and Luis Lula is leftist. And there is a lot of difference in opinion, war of words, ahead of the election, which is more than likely going to happen in October. So as I said, war of words, sheer defamation, blaming each other for the downhill Brazilian economy are the key factors of the presidential debate. Bolsonaro is nicknamed as the tropical Trump. So being a Republican, what do you think about Bolsonaro's Trumpism and Lula's constant accusation against him?
So I'm seeing a lot of parallels between Trump's base and Bolsonaro's base. I'll give you one example. Trump's base loves the American flag. I mean, you see it at all his rallies. The flag is everywhere. People are wearing red, white, and blue. People are wearing shirts with the flag on it. You go to Brazil, and it's blue, yellow, green. People at all the Bolsonaro rallies are wearing blue, yellow, and green. They're flying the flag. It's very similar. So there's this element of like ultra patriotism. And it has resonated amongst working class Brazilians in the same way that Trump's patriotism and ultranationalism resonated with working class Americans. So I'm seeing that just play out in an extreme fashion. And to the point where Brazilian voters are okay with Bolsonaro breaking certain norms. And here's one norm he broke. Brazilian Independence Day was a few days ago. In history, no president has ever campaigned on Brazilian Independence Day. Bolsonaro held not one but two rallies on that day. So what does that tell you? It tells you that Bolsonaro is a little nervous, right? Because he's campaigning as much as possible. He's campaigning on Independence Day, which is unheard of. And he's traveling so much and he's going to all these different cities to do so, including out of his base areas. He's going to areas that didn't even support him heavily in the last election and really trying to drive out support. So I'm seeing he's very much like Trump in the sense that he's barnstorming. He's very much like Trump in the sense that he attacks. He's like an attack dog against Mr. Lulu. And it's kind of scary to watch, to be honest with you, because I'm seeing like 2016 all over again in this country in 2020. It's just the dynamic of just constant fighting. And I worry most about the Brazilian people because they're facing such issues with unemployment, with inflation, with food, not shortages, but food increases, as well as gas increases, just like the rest of us. And so long as Bolsonaro and Lulu are focusing on how much they hate each other, they're not focusing on policies for the people. So some of this is out of Mr. Bolsonaro's control. He can't control the Russian-Ukrainian war. With that being said, are the voters going to stick by him and recognize that, or are they going to push for change? And I think if you look at a country near Brazil, like Chile, where you just had a leftist president put up a constitution that failed overwhelmingly, 60-something% to 30-something%, that might mean South America shifting a little more rightward than we think. Bolsonaro's down in the polls, but with the Chilean preliminary polls there, the constitution was supposed to pass. So I don't really believe the polls. I look at more like the swing and the mood of the people, and it seems like the mood of the people right now is angry and economically focused. So that might just play well into a right-wing person like Mr. Bolsonaro, especially for people who fear that too much government intervention and too many government constraints on the economy imposed by the left would only further exacerbate the economic problems Brazil is facing. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be close. It's going to be very close. And Bolsonaro is either going to win by the skin of his teeth or he's going to lose by the skin of his teeth. But I think it's really also going to depend on who comes out to vote. You know, people have to be motivated.
I think, Mr. Lula is kind of a little ahead of Mr. Bolsonaro.
Yeah.
And also, the point to be noted is some people, some leftists, they blame Bolsonaro and thinks that he is responsible about the burning of the Amazon forest because of some political gains and because of his industrialist policy.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, it is very controversial. And the presidential debate, I just tried to follow it, whether, it's a tight fight, as you said, there I just read some of the English subtitles. Although I'm learning Spanish, but it's hard to follow, the presidential debate when they're, conversing so eloquently, so fluently. So what do you think about the Amazon burning? Is it really he's responsible, or do you want to throw any light on it?
Sure. So from what I understand is the Amazon they're supposed to do a controlled burn every year. From what I understand, and past Brazilian governments have done this. And I understand the need for a controlled burn. I've seen it throughout the United States. It's how you prevent wildfires from spreading faster and hotter if you do controlled burns. So his argument is he did what every other Brazilian administration has done for the last, 10, 20, 30 years. The left is saying he did that for industrial purposes. It was not for controlled burn purposes. It was for industry. So I see it as, what is the truth? If the truth is that he did it for industrial reasons and to sell out to his developer friends, I would have voted for him. But if it was for controlled fires to stop future forest fires from becoming more hot and more catastrophic, I'm okay with that because that's in the name of science. So it really comes down to what is the truth. And until we find that out, I don't know what to believe. That's the thing, So like I said, if it was for environmental reasons, I'm okay with it. It was for economic reasons, I take serious issue with that. So I think Brazilian voters need to find out the truth. What is the truth? And that's very hard to do in politics.
I know. And is there any way that we Americans can patch up the relationship? I know it's kind of beyond repair,
we can't even get along with ourselves.
Exactly.
So,
but we are, you are Republican, I'm staunch Democrat. So, if we can do as a common person, common people, then of course, the world leaders, they should create an example. They should create history. They should make a difference. I strongly feel that everybody here is well educated, well read, well experienced. So why not? I don't see any reason why not. If there is a will, there is of course a way.
Absolutely. we have got to save the planet. I'm telling you, if we don't save the planet, we don't have politics to argue about. So I would love to see Bolsonaro and Lulu talk about environmental policy. Unfortunately, Bolsonaro does not. And despite the fact that I am Republican, I wish the Republicans would focus a little more on the environment. That's my one real big issue with them. But I think, that needs to be a major focus in a lot of these presidential elections moving forward is, ecological sustainability, because without that, you have no economics. You have no world to live in. You can't make money if you can't live.
Right, exactly, But to preserve natural resources, and Amazon forest is like, world's one of the biggest forest.
Yep.
And it is so resourceful with all kinds of different plants, trees, bushes, animals, birds. So, this is one of the main concern, and being well-wisher of the Brazilians, I strongly feel that we can take some kind of positive, optimistic step to patch up the leftist and rightist ideologies and differences in opinion. I know it is beyond repair, but there is nothing called impossible,
No,
right? I
no.
mean, we can
I mean,
try.
they need to be reminded of their common bond, which is that blue, yellow, and green flag, which is the
Mhm.
Brazilian flag. The common bond unites us at the end of the day. And same with
Exactly.
Americans. That red, white, and blue unites us, right? It's not supposed to divide us.
So, Aaron, I know that we keep on talking about climate change, and you are an example because every Sunday you do a cleaning to preserve, to beautify, to enhance the beauty of the property, in Westchester County, in different locations of Westchester County. It's just not one location. And you have a full team and you encourage them by giveaways and stuff. So talk a little bit to our audience that how you are helping and voluntarily helping, continuously and constantly helping with a lot of passion, emotion, and respect to the community.
Sure, and thank you for giving me the highlight on that. So we clean the streets every single Sunday, picking up bags and bags of trash, protecting our waterways from getting litter in them, protecting our animals and environment from accumulating litter throughout them. And we do a lot, and it's not just that. We do habitats for monarch butterflies so that they can have their habitat rebounded and see their population come back. Possum shelters so the possums can repopulate and stay warm throughout the winter. We do cutting up of the plastic. So when people throw them onto the streets, we cut them so that we get them incinerated anyway, but God forbid they ever get away from us, we make sure that the turtles and the fish can't get caught in plastic. So we cut it up properly. So there's a lot we're doing on a local level. My whole belief is you can't save the world if you can't save your town. So you have to be able to have clean streets. You have to be able to have a clean water system. You have to be able to stop littering in its tracks. Protect your green spaces in your local community as best you can. Work with your local government to do so. Don't use pesticides in your lawns. I mean, there's all these little things we can do. And I think if we all do a little bit, like, an hour a week, each one of us, we could save the world, no problem. But we have to have a will, we have to have a way, and we have to want to do it. So my group goes out every week, and we're going to continue doing what we're doing. And we ask that maybe, your viewers try to do the same. And you don't have to do it every week, but try to do something.
That's very impressive, indeed, very impressive. And I strongly believe that you are on the right track because charity always begins at home.
Thank
And
you.
Westchester County is your home county. So you live here in Westchester. I do too. And the way you are helping the community is really praiseworthy. And you are doing it from all your heart and soul. I know that you do not have a political position, you do not have an office right now, but your work is not based on whether you have an office or not. You do it
Right.
from all your passion, from the core of your heart and soul, with a lot of responsibility. That's
Thank you.
is the point to be noted. And
Thank
I
you.
really salute you, your dedication. That's very impressive.
Thank you.
So the next topic of discussion is Pakistan. So Pakistan has seen the worst flood calamity in its history, which has devastated the entire country, especially the beautiful Swat Valley. More than 1,000 lives are lost. Massive number of properties are damaged and washed away. That's very sad. The dams failed to hold water, and Pakistan's poor and rusty drainage system didn't function. So, Aaron, what is your suggestion about the flood control, and Pakistan's already broken economy has been more subsided immensely due to this calamity.
So we send our prayers to Pakistan. What happened I mean, we just talked about climate change. This is climate change. A third of the country was underwater. And if this is not a wake up call, I really don't know what is. I mean, we are seeing internationally just event after event, and it's failed to wake us up. It's sad. Here's what I think could happen. I saw this documentary the other day because I was researching this, when I knew we were going to talk about it. And something that happened in the West is they put a lot of beavers back into Western lands like Oregon and Washington. And what beavers do is they create their own dams. They're nature's engineers. I don't know that beavers would do well in Pakistan, but this is just a suggestion I'm putting out there. And when they create their own dams and waterways, what you see is the spreading out of water. And beavers actually are able to create new wetland systems. And the way it levels out, I mean, it's amazing. These are nature's engineers. It almost acts like levees. So I wonder if putting beavers in Pakistan, if they could survive there, would have any sort of difference to see if there's any way in which the rivers flow or the streams flow, that if a beaver went in there and floated a different way during times of intense rain and times of intense flooding, whether the drainage and runoff would go away from humanity or away from settlements and towards another way. So I'm just thinking in terms of engineering, why not maybe at this point leave it to nature's engineers, which would be the beaver. Again, I just don't know if that's a good habitat for them. I don't know if Pakistan has beavers. I haven't done enough research there. But this has worked in Oregon. It has worked in Washington. It has worked in parts of California. So if it could work there, maybe this could work in Pakistan. So that would be my solution, to at least look into that. But we have got to get on the climate change bandwagon. I mean, this is something that money can solve. Money can easily solve this. Pakistan is a friend, but it is a developing nation. So we have got to step in and provide aid. And think of all the military aid we provide to so many countries throughout the world. How about infrastructure aid instead? Better drainage systems, better irrigation systems, better economic or better ways to better their infrastructure, which will then better their economic system, if you will. So
Aaron, let me just stop you for 1 second.
Sure.
The Swat Valley, say for example, it used to be so beautiful. The water, of all the valleys and in entire Pakistan was like blue in color, I mean, I have seen the previous videos, the video clips, then the pictures, the posts, blogs. People have been TikToks, in social media, everywhere it is. But it is so unfortunate that blue water is vanished, and it is very muddy water. It's very muddy and reddish, brownish, reddish, water. I don't know from the mountains they came or from
It's
where.
from the runoff, yeah.
Yes,
runoff, yep.
it's like very heartbreaking. And Pakistan is right now bogged into debts and deficits. They don't have much left, in the Federal Reserve. So I don't know that. I hope not, and I do not want, Pakistan to become the next Greece,
Yep. No, that's why countries have got to step up. But it can't just be us. There are very rich countries in Europe. Germany is very rich. France is very rich. These countries have money. So it can't just be us. And I actually think perhaps England.
I mean, we already have so many liabilities, so
we do.
both inside
But the
and
thing
outside.
is, when it comes to climate, I know we always say, let's not pour water from an empty cup. But when it comes to climate, we're all in this together. So I think it might be worth spending the money because if it means saving our world, again, you can't spend money in a world you can't live in. So, what good is having that money anyway if we don't have a good climate? And
also the point to be noted is Pakistan's rusty and damaged drainage system. There is a lot of logging happens in Karachi and in big cities. Karachi is a very big city. It's world famous. Okay. Yep. So, this water logging and the waste products, Pakistan needs to put their garbage and the waste products in the proper place, not on the roadside, just like that, because what happens is when there is a water logging due to whatever reason it's concerned, I mean, in addition to the logging, all this garbage and waste materials, it contaminates. There is a lot of contamination which happens throughout in Pakistan. So if you can give some tips, some idea that how Pakistan can make it better.
So I think a lot of that has to do with education. Again, we have to educate people on how to get rid of garbage and how to get rid of trash. But I also think, you hit a good point with the logging industry in Pakistan is flooding increases and runoff increases as you take trees away. So if you were to plant more trees and get more vegetation, and it sucks up all that water, it stops a lot of the erosion, it stops a lot of the runoff. So deforestation is definitely a problem too, contributing to the flooding. And as you plant more trees, the earth will get cooler. So that's another positive thing there. So I think education is key. That should be number one. But two, perhaps reforestation. I have to look into some more causes of the floods as well, internationally, what causes floods. But I know if you have proper forestation and proper vegetation, a lot of the flood remedies or a lot of the flood issues can be mitigated through the absorption of that water.
Right. And the point to be noted is that deforestation throughout the world, it has always happened because people have been very much inclined to sell their property and the land for business purposes. They make, housing complexes, then, plazas, malls, shopping plazas, that's what I mean. Then, they're selling it to the foreign investors, for money. And that's why, worldwide, I would say that deforestation happens, and that creates a very bad impact on the climate change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's it's an international issue.
An international issue, right?
And I agree with you. And I think that's why we have got to do better in terms of sustainable humanity. And what I mean by that is we can't have 7 kids each. We just can't. We have to have 1 or 2. And we have to teach kids how to be sustainable, and we can't just keep cutting things down. I mean, we're gonna run ourselves right off the planet. It's very sad that we're spending all this money exploring other planets because we think we won't be able to live here when we could be spending that money trying to save this one.
Pakistan's ex-Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan, he actually planted billions of trees, okay, but it was more in a rural site. So in the urban sites, they have to do the same.
Yes.
Because, it is really, there's a direct impact on their economy, which is caused by the flood. And in this level, which is like a devastating flood. So that's
absolutely. Absolutely. We can't, and you hit a good point. You can't focus on the exurban and rural areas only. You need trees in the city. New York City has green spaces. Central Park was a wonderful idea to provide green spaces in the city.
The heart of Manhattan, exactly.
Yeah, other countries should really look to do the same thing. And also to keep your city cooler. More trees is more shade, more oxygen. Again, it cuts down the amount of carbon. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
And I completely agree with you. And New York City is an example where it is surrounded by so many skyscrapers, and in the heart of Manhattan, there is Central Park.
Even in your city, your city is actually nicknamed the City of Trees. I don't know if you knew that.
People can walk, and that is very good. It's very healthy.
Well, right here in Westchester, I'm saying where you live they call it the City of Trees.
City of Trees.
Yep, where you are. Yep. They said the former mayor back in like the 70s went on the top of one of the buildings in your city and looked out and saw so many trees. They covered the buildings. So even in areas like Westchester, we have a lot of trees. We did a good job.
Right, we did a good job. That's great. So as a closing statement, Aaron, let's talk a little bit about 9/11. So it has changed the history of United States of America. So unexpected, this thing happened. The September 11 attacks, commonly known as 9/11, were 4 coordinated suicide terrorist attacks carried out by the militant Islamic extremist network Al-Qaeda against the United States of America. Social sites report several inside stories. Bottom line is that the loss of lives of common people, the security personnel, and the firefighters who became martyrs. So, Aaron, please give us a brief feedback about 9/11 as your closing statement. And
Yeah,
today
so
is 9/11.
today is 9/11. So usually I'm very cheery, as you know, but I'm very upset today. And here's why. I read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times every morning. And on the front page, nothing, not a single mention of either by either major newspaper about 9/11. I take serious issue with that. Meanwhile, the New York Post, first thing on the front page is a dedication to 9/11. So what are we doing? It's 21 years later. Are we forgotten? I mean, this is such an insult, especially to New Yorkers. This is the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. These are New York publications, and they didn't mention 9/11 on the front page. I mean, we lost almost 3,000 people that day, thousands of innocent lives rather, on the planes, in the towers, the firefighters, the police, the first responders. How do we?
Yeah,
How do we
almost
get to?
4,000 casualties, I recall. Almost,
Actually, with the yeah, you're right. It is 4,000. My apologies.
No,
But
that's okay.
how did we get here? I remember 10 years after 9/11, I was 14 years old, and there was a big ceremony. Even 20 years after 9/11 last year, big ceremony, and everybody talked about it. The point is, we don't forget, right? I mean, even look at air travel today. To get on an airplane, all the things you have to go through are because of 9/11. So 21 years later, for both major publications, not even to mention 9/11 on their front page, in New York City, in the heart of where this happened, it's concerning to me. It really is. So I think we need to. This is similar to me. People ask me, why do we focus on the Holocaust? Why do we focus on slavery? Why do we focus on things? We need to focus on the negative things that happened to this country, the negative things that happened in the world. Otherwise, they'll happen again because we forget that these things happen. And if we forget, then evil persists. So I'm very passionate about this kind of stuff because I think we need to constantly remind ourselves what happened so we can be alert, so we can be aware, so we can fight evil, so we can love our fellow American even more, so we can love our fellow human even more. Because at the end of the day, if we ignore the ugly, if we ignore the bad, it's going to come back and it's going to hit us even harder. So I really caution people that I know it's 21 years is a long time. I know but just take a minute to think about what happened, because if you don't, it's going to happen again. We have got to honor those that have been lost. And the worst thing we can do, is forget that this happened.
Exactly. I mean, people say that memories fade and then out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
All these proverbs, it doesn't work in this kind of situation, where we have lost so many people, so many personnel, and there had been so many casualties. And Aaron, please don't mind, forgive me. I want to ask you this question.
Sure.
When all these things happen, you belong to the Republican Party. So we had a Republican president, Mr. George W. Bush. And when he was informed, he was in a nursery school, and the book that he was reading to the kids, it was upside down. So do you think that he was not, interested in it, or was he not taking it seriously in the beginning when he was informed about this accident? So what
there's a lot of
was going
debate.
on?
There's a lot of debate as to what happened there. I personally see it. I do a lot of reading to kids too. You see my Facebook, and I've actually been called in the middle of my reading. And what I did is I picked up the phone and I said, I'll be there after the reading. And I finished the reading. Why did I do that? Because you don't want to upset the kids. The kids, yeah, especially if you're the president of the United States, his whole mission there was to not cause panic. And I think that was a noble mission. Do I agree with how long he waited? I don't know about that. But I think there's something in him not panicking in front of a bunch of school children. So I think it's up for debate. I really do. Because I probably would have done the same thing. I probably would have finished the book just to make sure the kids felt things were okay, a little normal. And then as soon as you're out of there, that's when you move on it. Other critics will say that was the biggest emergency under his watch. He should have gotten out of there immediately. So it's I see both sides. I really do. You don't want to upset kids. You don't want to upset normalcy, but tragedy just occurred. And it also, I mean, we knew that an attack was being planned. We just don't know when and we don't know where. But for years, I think it was 1991, Osama bin Laden's first big threat was that he was going to hit the United States. So we knew for at least 10 years that they were going to hit us at some point and somewhere. We just didn't know when, we didn't know where. And I think it was bound to happen, unfortunately, because we didn't go after Osama bin Laden earlier than we should have.
And another point to be noted is that so many of our presidents, they have visited Middle East. They have tried their very best ways to negotiate and talk to the Arab leaders, to the Arab countries. But, so far we haven't seen much, as far the Middle East peace process is concerned and about the Arab countries. So how can we make our ties better? Because if, friendship and understanding, negotiation, it can bring something positive, on our plate, because revenge, counter revenge, it doesn't work, and common people suffers the most.
I think a lot of it is understanding. I mean, when you're talking about a nation like Afghanistan, for example, we don't understand Afghanistan. We pretend to understand Afghanistan, but we don't understand Afghanistan. We don't understand the thousands of years that have been going on with different clans and different tribes and different power dynamics. And our issue is we walk into these countries thinking we can push American democracy, and we have no respect for the current orders over there. And that's a serious issue. That's like people coming to our country and saying, stop with the House of Representatives. You don't need a House of Representatives. Do my way instead, and put in some other process. We would go crazy. So we do the same thing to other countries where we say, your king's not working out. Put in a democracy instead. You can't do that. So I think we have got to start to understand better. We've got to stop pushing our ideals. Look, democracy is a great thing. I'm very thankful I live here, but not everybody wants democracy. Not everybody wants the American way of government. Not everybody needs the American way of government. So I think that's another thing. We need to have a mutual understanding with people, with countries that we're not in the same place in terms of government philosophy, and that's fine. We still have to respect each other. So I think that's a big thing. I think, and until the United States and England and Germany and some of these other big powers understand that, I don't think there's going to be progress. So I think once we go in there understanding there's differences and we're not going to change that, that's when you say, all right, differences in government, fine. But how do we reach a common goal of serving the people? And, I think that's an honorable question to pursue.
Yeah, exactly. To be respectful about each other's culture and heritage, language, cuisine. And it is always by the people, for the people, of the people, of whichever country it is concerned. So thank you so much, Aaron. I know you are super busy with your own world, with your studies, with your volunteer work, serving the community, and also with your family and about your nature, preservation of nature.
Thank you.
And I more than appreciate you. You are our star speaker, and I really appreciate you to give Asavari time every month to come and to talk on valuable topics.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. This is we need more free form dialogue, and you provide that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure.